Hello everyone, this is a continuation to the recent ColdFusion video, and it is important that you first check it out before proceeding with this video. Don't get put off by the length of the video, as I'm sure you're going to scroll through Twitter and Instagram for twice the amount of time later and gain a hundredth of the knowledge you should actually be aware of. So briefly recapping the points that he covers in his video: the ways of money creation, why can't infinite money be printed, how the monetary system evolved and came to be in the state it is today, the powers trusted to the private banks and the influence they have on the financial system, along with their right to invest in financial securities using deposits made by customers, boom and bust cycles, and how after the 2008 financial crisis, money has been printed at an alarming rate to bail out the big players, thereby keeping the economy on life support. And finally, he covers how, as a result, the stock market no longer reflects reality and the Cantillon effect. The obvious problem that one asks from watching the video: why do the common people get no bailouts when the central banks have infinitely deep pockets? Why are the assets of common people seized when they can't repay their debt that is actually backed by money created out of thin air? Why is it infinitely difficult for them to get a job or start a business, especially if they don't have any savings or family friends to fall back on, while big banks get a big fat check when they are in trouble? Hardly seems fair. At the end of his video, ColdFusion leaves us on an ominous note that there isn't much that can be done to fix the global financial system and economy, and that we are past the point where a solution could have been applied. But I don't quite agree with this. If you stick to the end of this video, you'll understand why I am saying this. For starters, I think it is fair to say that the problem which I just described is clearly not as trivial as they can print money when it's convenient for them, but I can't seem to get a break. Or else people would have been on the streets protesting long ago and we would already have a solution. Let us first set some context and get an idea of what it is we are exactly dealing with. Think of the development of the monetary and financial systems as a puzzle with ever-increasing complexity. It started off with the barter system, where it was a simple puzzle labeled for children from ages 3 to 8, and it has since grown to a three-dimensional puzzle with moving parts and where the shapes of the pieces change continuously. We are the tiny microscopic pieces, thinking differently, saving differently, and spending money differently. The organizations we create by working together are the bigger pieces of the puzzle. Everything is connected and intertwined so delicately that no one can fully grasp the effect of moving any one piece out of place. It becomes a domino effect, and in this case, the severity of when one domino collapses can just be speculated. We just don't have the data, and even if we had, we don't have the computing power to analyze and predict what will come next. You can compare it to predicting the weather. There are simply so many unknown variables, and the data set needed is so huge that it possibly can't be collected or computed upon. One can argue, if the system is unfair, delicate, and so complex that no one knows how to fix it, why not come up with a better one to replace the current system? And you are partially correct. This is the reason why there are people investing in cryptocurrency, as they think it is the currency of the future, and also the reason people still feel safe buying gold. But there is a catch, as always. The current system works. It is unfair, but it works. Let me elaborate exactly what I mean by saying it works. We have to go back in time for this. Imagine an adult human fit to take care of himself or herself. This human needs food, water, shelter, protection from wild animals, and a few other things. This human realizes if it teams up with another human, different tasks can be divided amongst them. One can gather food, one can go fetch water, one can act as a guard, alarming others against wild animals, and therefore they all play their roles, doing something they are good at or learn to be good at, and thus, for once, they start living instead of surviving. The groups then began increasing in size, where different people could concentrate on different things, thus contributing something of value to the community. But the value created by one human isn't always equivalent to the value created by another. You wouldn't want to work for a week building a hut only to be given a bag of rice. Maybe you would have been satisfied by 10 chickens and a cow. You want something equal in return for the value you created by the time and effort you spent. If you aren't still in school, you know next how precious metals come into the picture as currency, and consequently how the floating rate system became prevalent globally. The underlying concept here that I want to capture is that of exchanging value fairly and thereby living or increasing the standard of living instead of surviving. You don't get things for free, because why would someone work for you to give you what you want without getting anything in return? Therefore, coming back to the present, this is exactly what works. Instead of value being created and then exchanged in a single trade, hut for chickens and cow, true value is created in a much bigger cycle after exchanging a lot of different hands. And you can be a part of this huge cycle somewhere, creating some type of value, thankfully not limited to hunting food or fetching water, and reaping the benefits of value created by other people via currency as an exchanging medium. The system works because humanity progresses more efficiently this way, with factors such as competition ensuring that the best idea and execution of that idea survives. But now, coming back to paying debt, let us first quickly understand why debt helps an economy to grow by a simple thought experiment, and therefore the reason it exists. Imagine a small country with closed borders. It has all the natural resources it needs to create anything and everything. Let's say the people in the country agree that the value of all resources in the country is equivalent to $1,000. According to the fair value of resources like land, livestock, crops, etc., that each family or person owns, the $1,000 is then appropriately distributed. Let us see 1. How the $1,000 can bring value worth $10,000. 2. How debt is beneficial. And finally, why printing more money is okay. Now look at this diagram carefully. This is a simple model of the economy. You go to the market to work hard and produce goods that people value. You sell these goods, or from another perspective, someone consumes your goods and you get paid. Similarly, you too consume in that process simultaneously, and someone else is earning your money by selling something that you required. Recognize that this is a cycle, or to phrase it in another way, it is an egg or chicken situation. The point being, don't think too much into what comes first, because in the next diagram, it may be a problem for some of you. Now, in the first cycle, the people of the country use their $1,000 and by extension their resources to produce goods and subsequently consume them. For simplicity, we'll assume that the input equals output. Therefore, this $1,000 comes back to the people in the form of earnings. Now, during the next cycle, few people realize they don't need to consume so much, and that it is wise to save their money for a number of different reasons. Few people may simply have more money than they can spend, and therefore, by not spending it, are also essentially saving the money. Let us say that they save 10% of what they have earned. This means that now only $900 worth of goods will be consumed. Consequently, $900 is also the earnings. Going through the cycle once again, saving 10% of the earnings, the next consumption cycle is equal to $810, and it goes on and on. Now look at this table, taken from a macroeconomics book by Donmus Fisher. We can make a connection between demand and consumption. If $1,000 worth of goods have been consumed, it means that there was a demand for $1,000 of goods. Therefore, without getting into why the symbol is delta A, in our case, delta A is equal to $1,000. The variable C over here is called the marginal propensity to consume. In other words, it is the fraction of income that will be used for consumption. In our case, C is 0.9 because 90% of the income is being used for consumption. So, substituting the values of delta A as 1000 and C as 0.9, we see that in the first round, the total increase in income is of $1,000. In the second round, it is of $900. In the third round, it is of $810, and so on and so forth. What we see here is that even though we started with just $1,000, the people of the country was still able to consume real goods and services worth $10,000. How? If you do the math and go through the entire iterations, you will see that it comes out to be equal to 1 upon 1 minus c into delta A, which is 1 upon zero point 0.1 into 1000, hence 10,000. This is known as the multiplier effect. This, of course, is contingent upon the fact that c is zero point 0.9 and stays constant throughout all the rounds. So, what about the savings made by certain citizens of the country? We just saw that the rotation of money is a good thing. So if these people with surplus loaned out the money to people who were in need at some interest rate, they would earn something out of their otherwise idle money without having to do any hard work, and the borrowers can use that money to consume goods while simultaneously trying to produce something valuable out of it in order to further sell it and be able to repay the loan with interest. All in all, the lenders earn extra income. The borrowers spend the money on extra goods, thereby increasing income of other people in the country. And most important of all, new value was created out of things that were less valuable before. Take an example of the $900 in the second cycle. An input of $900 will more often than not create something more valuable because of all the people, smart and hardworking, trying to increase their standards of living. So now, after having understood how $1,000 multiplies in value after exchanging a lot of hands, and how debt is ideally beneficial to everyone, we notice that the total money in circulation is still $1,000, but we just saw that the value present in the country has definitely increased. Here is where creating more currency comes into the picture. Initially, by using certain measuring sticks, the country was worth $1,000. Now, using that same stick, the country is more than $1,000, because those logs of wood that were present in a random carpenter's backyard have been transformed into tables. The old yak, who won't give milk anymore, has been transformed into meat and a fur coat, while also leaving behind a few offsprings. And the silicon from sand is being used to manufacture transistors, and those transistors are being used to make all sorts of electronics. And these are just a few examples of value being created. So, in a hypothetical country, if there is now value of $100,000 and there is also $100,000 in circulation, everyone feels richer because they now have $100,000 to spend instead of $1,000, and the economy thus keeps on prospering. But if instead they had printed more and the money in circulation was, say, $1 million, while the actual economic value present is still $100,000, the value of the currency decreases. $10 of the currency would now buy only $1 worth of goods instead of $10 worth of goods. Why? Because of simple supply and demand. Everyone has more money in their pockets, and everyone wants to buy the same thing, which is limited. Naturally, the price of the thing goes up. Now, without going into further macroeconomic theories and details, understand this. Due to the inherent wealth inequality that has been aggravated throughout human history, debt plays a crucial role, which is keeping the circulation of money going on. It is therefore vital to the functioning of an economy and that everyone pays their debt, and if they don't, they aren't let off the hook without consequences. Nothing comes for free, or else that cycle of value creation will break, resulting in people losing faith in the system, making them hoard money, reducing money circulation, further making things worse, and creating a vicious self-destructing cycle. In the worst case scenario, there will be complete chaos and anarchy. Money won't be worth anything, crime rates will go up rapidly, and the cycle of self-destruction will sustain. Bottom line is, there should not and cannot be an expectation that someone else will deliver something of value to you for free. A Lannister should always pay the debt. You may still be asking yourself, as you should, that none of this explains why do big banks get bailouts and not individuals like us. Well, because you are just a tiny piece of the complex financial system. The domino effect caused by you alone, by not being able to pay your loan, is insignificant when compared to a bank, a much bigger piece of the puzzle, which is not able to meet its obligations. But still, the fact remains that the system seems unfair. Why are a group of people allowed to create money out of nowhere, loan it to you, and receive interest when you have to do the hard work of creating value and paying it back, or else face the consequences of having real assets seized by the bank, who didn't actually earn the money to pay for those assets, but simply created that money out of thin air. Even a child can figure out something is wrong. We understand the fact by now that value is being created daily, and that when printing an equivalent amount of currency in the long run matches the value that has been created up until then, a balance is maintained. Inflation cycles, booms and recessions will keep happening due to mismatches between the value present and the money in circulation in the short run. Now, the root cause, which even ColdFusion points out, is the following. The power of creating and controlling the circulation of currency bestowed upon banks has gone out of hand, as there has been an unequal investment in education, healthcare, research and development, etc., and therefore true value hasn't been created to support the influx of currency, but instead we are witnessing a huge housing and stock market bubble which will burst and shatter the economy in a way no one can predict. Now, here is where I differ with ColdFusion. I feel that there is a solution which is real and achievable enough without going through a devastating financial crisis with long-lasting and damaging effects as a wake-up call for major reforms, which ColdFusion points out can come as soon as this decade. So what is the solution? The first half is stripping private banks of this unfair power of creating money and having them play by the same rules as everyone else. While the second half of the solution has been staring at you during the whole 2020 election campaign in America. Redistribution of wealth. Let me elaborate. The two parts are as follows. Both creating and allocating newly created money by lending it should be the responsibility of only the central bank, under the most stringent checks and measures possible, out of the reach of politics and people with power looking to influence the process for their selfish gains. Second, redistribution of money, which can be done through a combination of better tax laws, creating bills supporting schemes like universal basic income, and making policies for better funding in the right sectors, that is, education, R&D, healthcare, renewables, etc., thereby creating true value in the long run, instead of looking for short-term growth and gains by more than required funding in sectors like housing, fossil fuels, or arms and weapons. There is no point in humanity progressing if millions of people have to suffer to get access to basic needs such as food and shelter in that process. You may argue that it is the price that has to be paid for development and progress. The weak, or those who can't create value, will always get left behind in order for the good to remain. But is it really that simple? Basic necessities like food and shelter weren't there in enough quantity for most of human history. Times have changed though. There shouldn't be a fear of not getting food or not having a place to sleep. While people still need to earn other luxuries, these basic needs can be provided by having appropriate measures in place. Some are born disadvantaged, some people fail in the business losing all their money, and some simply run out of luck by contracting a disease like cancer. But in the 21st century, it is possible to give them a second chance through proper redistribution of wealth. Of course, there will also be people who will take advantage of such schemes and just be lazy because they are getting free food and a roof to sleep under, or maybe just do drugs instead. But I believe there are many more people out there who will use this sense of security to work hard, invest in themselves, and create value in the pursuit of a better life. They just can't do it on an empty stomach. As a final thought, what can you, as an individual, do about it? Use your vote wisely. Be more involved in your democracy. For the Indian viewers, if anyone actually made this far, I voted Nota in the 2019 elections and was called out for it because people were convinced that Nota was a waste of vote. They said it doesn't matter because even if 50% votes are Nota, the party with the majority will still come into power. The point to realize is not that it didn't matter in this election, but that it will matter in the next, because the opposition that is eager to come into power will realize that there is 50% of the population waiting for the demands to be met, and that if they are the ones that can meet those demands, they can capture those votes to then come into power next time, bringing a systematic change slowly but surely. Fixing this problem now and going through short-term pain is 1,000 times better than betting on an impending crisis. We are all living in a century-old building full of cracks. Our options are A. Let it be as it is and let those cracks widen till the building falls upon us. B. Let something like the coronavirus destroy the building even quicker. Or, and it's a big or, C. We come together and repair the building and possibly consider shifting to a newer one. It will be hard getting everyone to fix the cracks or getting everyone to shift from one building to another. But I think you will agree it is better than having your roof fall over your head. So that's it for this video. I hope that this video was helpful for anyone who watched so far. So yeah, live long and prosper and cheers.